When I was much, much younger than I am now, around 5 or 6 years old, a popular movie had been released, and I desperately wanted to see it. My dad gave me an ultimatum. If I read the full chapter book that the movie was based on, he would take me to see it. Unbeknownst to him, I would take on his challenge. I went into my school's library and checked out the classic A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. I finished it in 2 days. I was mesmerized. I read it throughout every spare moment I had through the school day and through the night. I could not put this book down until I reached the final word. Ironically, when he finally took me to see the movie, I was appalled by the inaccuracies present in every scene. With great disappointment, I begged to get home so I could read the real story all over again. Hi, I'm a 15-year-old sophomore student at Kalima Montessori. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I am a literacy arts advocate. I love my school, and I love the students in it. That's why I started my school's library, all with the main dream to create a space for children that ignites a passion for reading. To bring my idea to life, I have organized and reserved a space for our library. I have planned events and research so that this library will become a space for children to continue or begin their own passion for reading, just as I did when I was their age. My hope is that one day another 6-year-old, with or without an ultimatum, will wander into the library and have their lives as impacted as I have mine. However, as I dove into researching and working on this library project, I discovered something terrifying. The more I observed how books shaped the people around me, the more I noticed the less than satisfactory gaps in literacy and its connection, or rather disconnection, to the world. Gaps that diminish intellectual engagement, weaken education, and ultimately drain our empathy for one another. At the Fulton County Library, where I volunteer, it is becoming more and more empty. And when it's not empty, it's filled with people there with the sole intention of skipping past the books and going straight to the computers. I watch the news and hear about how books are becoming increasingly more censored. I see how a large number of books are being taken off the shelves in sync with the dropping vocabulary of the students around me. All of this is especially concerning for me, as someone whose life would be substantially different without a passion for reading. My mom once said, "I've inhaled books since birth." I finished books in an hour, stayed up late, sacrificed sleep just to read the same book the next day. Instead of playing with Barbies, I spent my time treating my books like they were my dolls, collecting them neatly and choosing to snuggle beside them over any stuffed animal. But my passion for reading didn't stay exclusive to the midnight hours of my bedroom. No, it showed itself in every aspect of my life. As I went on reading advanced books, sometimes more advanced than what my school curriculum could keep up with, I began to excel in all of my classes. Not only in your standard reading and writing classes, but also in social studies, where I found myself applying the moral lessons of fairy tales to the way I understood the world. In middle school, I found myself diving deeper into philosophy, theology, and political science, seeing them as simply an extension to literary analysis. These ideas of morality and logic were not foreign to me or purely academic to me. I had already encountered them years earlier in the stories I loved. For example, one of my all-time favorite books is Animal Farm by George Orwell, a political allegory that on first read stands as simply a metaphor for communism. I laughed while reading the story at the choice to make both the good politician and the bad politician pigs. In this book, the pigs taught me, to an extent, that neither side truly had morality, and that blame could be placed on both sides equally. As I dove deeper into this story, I held it up as a mirror to myself, the people around me, and the world as a whole. Through these farm animal characters, I started to recognize and identify my own privilege and a clear need to change it. Books like this pushed me to confront the biases in myself and in the world around me, igniting a drive to actively be a part of changing them. Animal Farm is part of what made me decide to study political science in the future and led me through a chain of events that put me on this stage today. This book and hundreds of others has helped to shape my worldview in a more empathetic way. In a string of major moments in my life so far, I can trace a clear momentum, with every book nudging me towards something meaningful in my growth as a student and in my future career. Books gave me the audacity to believe I was capable of being in spaces I was never expected to enter. And with that audacity, I am now here today. So, I'm here to show you, kids and adults alike, that stories like this can be lived again and again. That even if you feel unmotivated or down, you can rise into power, into motivation, and into an active momentum that continues to carry you forward. It's easy to feel like this, however. Down. Like the world is draining everything out of you slowly. Our current society feels overstimulated, stressed, anxiety-filled, mainly fueled by constant media streaming and the general hardships of life. There is a need for escape. A study published by the American Psychological Association in 2020 found that after surveying 2,251 adults, they found people who were more likely to seek out media covering COVID-19 showed higher levels of emotional distress and anxiety. And even though it's been 6 years since 2020, I can't believe it either, this still rings strikingly true. We are still living in a world where constant noise overwhelms our minds faster than we can quiet them. Another study by the Pew Research Center found that almost half of US adults get their news from social media, it being proven time and time again to have a heavy negative impact on the brain, mental health, and cognitive function, especially on brains not fully developed. As adults and teenage minds progressively rely on these unhealthy forms of media to a heightening degree, our minds decline further and further. I believe this is why some forms of social media are so toxic to the human mind. Quick responses fueled by hate as a result of inaccurate media reports cause conflict with our everyday interactions in person and virtually. With the real-time reports of events giving way to negative attention grabbers, it drives negativity without provoking critical thinking, which reading enables. When we slow down to examine every word carefully, our brains can process and analyze them better. We can make better judgments and have better critical thinking when we can discern the good from the bad, which is substantially easier when it's actually separated. The media algorithms and brand loyalty from sponsors make it difficult to form your true thoughts and intentions about political issues, educational stances, and socioeconomic problems because of the many virtual voices in our society. We end up inside an echo chamber with our friends and family hearing the same opinions repeated over and over again. And when you grow up in a world like this, bred with an opinion and mindset predetermined, it makes it substantially harder to connect with anyone outside of that space. This is a perfect breeding ground for a world of polarization and a generation with a huge empathy problem. It makes us more willing to resort to violence, bullying, and prejudice, hatred as a whole. The book's inherent purpose is to provide a different perspective, even the ones that aren't clearly political. Take a book like Matilda by Roald Dahl, for example. A young abused girl is gifted telepathy and takes control and authority over her own life. Fiction and fantasy books ask us to accept an experience different from our own. However, we are still able to find the relatability in books like this, showing us that human experience will always still be human. Even if we aren't princesses, even if we don't live in a world where dragons exist, or a world in which karma has a physical embodiment we can wield to our greatest desire, like in Matilda, it still leaves us with a feeling of connection. We can still suspend our belief that our reality is the only right and logical one, and simply hope the protagonist wins in the end, even if we've never had to go on a treacherous journey around the world. These fantastical stories teach us empathy, which is why we are supposed to read them at a younger age, to instill those values in us. However, there is a reason these lessons of critical thinking and empathy haven't seemed to stick as much nowadays as they have in the past. Let's play a game. I've mentioned a couple of books over the span of this talk. Which one out of these three do you believe to be considered a banned book? You can raise your hand, you can do whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Okay. Any other responses? Matilda, maybe? Or Wrinkle in Time, maybe? You have your answer locked in? Okay, drum roll, please. It's all of them. Britannica defines book banning and censorship as, quote, the practice of prohibiting or restricting the reading of certain books by the general public or by members of a local community or religious group. The group I'm most familiar with is the one focused on banning books through government-funded school boards, which happens in many countries where censorship is or isn't considered the norm. This can look like removing books from already underfunded libraries, the criminalizing and illegalizing the distribution or publishing of certain books, or even participating in literal book burning. People and organizations are deliberately buying out copies of books they do not like and actually burning them. Burning them. Isn't that a dystopian thought? To physically burn history, archives, intelligence, and authors' art. Many people throughout time have expressed sorrow and mourned the vast amount of knowledge that was lost in the burnings of the Library of Alexandria. Think of all the scientific discoveries, philosophical works, and historical records just gone. I wonder how much information we take for granted today won't survive for future generations. Through both our literal and metaphorical burning of books, how much history, intelligence, and forever relevant archival information has been lost. If literacy wasn't genuinely the key, why would leaders be so quick to reduce, remove, and ultimately destroy it? I mentioned Orwell earlier in my talk. A controversial political fiction author, yes, but someone who pushed for awareness of literacy of both the past and the present. He understood and quite deliberately expressed the damage that it can cause. I agreed with him when he said, quote, there is no quicker route to the corruption of thought than through the corruption of language. And what we are witnessing today is a clear corruption of language. As we continue to polarize and descend further into madness as a society, we are destroying and ignoring the very thing that could very well save us. I already showed you why you personally need literacy, but this is why we all need it, to save us. That's why I'm here today. Because I am telling you, it is our job to rescue and reclaim literacy as not a chore, but as a weapon. And I'm not speaking to one specific generation either. My message is for everyone. In order for substantial progress to be made to overturn the Ray Bradbury-esque reality we seem to be headed towards, we need to stop general division as a whole. That means being willing to be an active participant in your own literacy as well as the world's. If you are someone who hasn't cared in the past about reading or about social justice or about an active momentum, then this is the time when you should begin to. For yourself, If you are that person who hasn't picked up a book in decades, try. The act of simply trying is what will bring you to actually moving into an active momentum rather than a passive one. And if you aren't that type of person, if you are the one who does read, who still feels all the things I mentioned earlier of stress, depression, of unfulfillment, etc., then I tell you this. The piece you're missing is that empathetic hand. To look at your neighborhood, your country, your world, and see the imperfection in it and have a desire to change it, that desire is stronger than most people realize. And I'm of the belief that if it is there, it was always supposed to be. You are meant to help. You are meant to save. And by using those two archetypes, utilizing them both at their full maximum momentum, that is what will save illiteracy from killing us anymore. Thank you.